Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.
Welcome to all.
History is made of stories.
In this episode, we'll be talking about how companies can develop a learning culture.
We all want methods and concrete tools, and we're disappointed when we leave a training without the answers we were hoping for. But sometimes the answer just isn't that simple.
Sometimes there's no recipe to follow to the letter. It's often more complicated than that, and requires us to rethink training and skills development. So, developing a learning culture, what's the story?
You've undoubtedly heard the proverb, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime.
Everyone has, but let's take things a bit deeper than the saying. The real question is, what happens when there are no more fish? When they won't bite? When the other fishermen have found a better way to fish than you?
Well, you're hungry again, which is why it's essential not to reduce learning to methods and tools specific to a situation. Because when it changes, the tools become obsolete and you have to start over.
Tools are the best when you want to move fast to meet a concrete need and get quick results. But quick results are often fleeting. When everything is always changing, you have to move beyond methods to try to understand the underlying elements that are invariable.
When you fish, you learn about different species of fishes, currents, bait, the weight of the line most likely to draw your preferred fish, and so on. In other words, you learn to adapt.
Exactly. No tool is effective unless it's paired with a culture of learning.
It's the same story at companies. We have to move beyond immediate actions designed to achieve quick results, like a training on a new tool, for example, to think seriously about how to promote a long-term culture of learning.
And unfortunately, this isn't always an obvious decision since it can upend certain practices.
First up, our relationship with mistakes. To learn, you have to try and fail. But attitudes toward failure are often extreme.
Some people deny its very existence. Talents don't make mistakes. It becomes a taboo. And others home in on mistakes, eager to single out the guilty party rather than find a solution. Both of these approaches cover up mistakes without learning from them, which is the only way to prevent them from happening again.
A culture of learning and personal development can also irk some people because it promotes critical thinking.
Learning is about questioning your thoughts and actions and those of others in an attempt to move forward. So you have to be able to accept criticism and question the status quo to ensure lasting performance.
The entire company needs to be able to accept criticism and re-examine their own practices, beginning with management, of course, who must set the example.
And to ensure the criticism is constructive, information must be shared, which isn't always easy.
How do you remove barriers to knowledge? How do you share information more transparently? Is the company willing? Are there power games in the mix?
While it's important not to over-formalize knowledge acquisition, promoting a culture of information sharing is a crucial step for ensuring employees have the ability to learn and improve practices.
Right, because that's the goal. Continuous improvement. It's not just about looking back and sharing feedback. It's about using it to take away useful information for the future.
Which of course brings us back to decision-making processes, governance styles, and the role of autonomy.
Learning to learn is a key skill for achieving the ability to constantly adapt, while adaptation at the individual level is not the only area to work on to improve collective agility. It remains essential.
HR departments must take up the topic of continuous learning and make it a part of company culture if they hope to add value to their company's business and play their role in ensuring long-term success.
And we all have a role to play in stepping up our learning culture. The first step is to realize how necessary it is. Next, we have to address our preconceived notions about learning requires. And last but not least, we must change our individual and collective practices.
To recap, training employees goes far beyond the scope of methods and tools. It's about promoting a learning culture that enables individuals to adapt to the context. This approach requires us to reassess certain practices, like the way we view mistakes, critical thinking, information sharing, and continuous improvement. Is that right?
Exactly right. Way to make a long story short. Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.